Saints' Day, folks. Amazing, our first Penny Stamps Distinguished Speaker Series event in a church. And we thank you, all the folks here from Bethlehem United, for welcoming us into your sanctuary. We have a really special person to share with you tonight, and we're very excited to finally be presenting a great wish for many years, Tony Award-winning actor, director, playwright, screenwriter, and now podcaster, John Cameron Mitchell. Yeah. A thank you to our partners today for their support, as today's presentation is a co-presentation with our longtime dear partner, the University Musical Society. And not incidentally, John Cameron Mitchell is here in Ann Arbor in conjunction with his University Musical Society performance, which is happening tomorrow evening at Hill Auditorium at 8 p.m. The Origin of Love Tour. This includes songs and stories from groundbreaking decades of post-punk, neo-glam rock, and a collective quest for love, hope, and identity. So I hope you all have tickets already. If you don't, there may be a few left, so please grab them in a hurry. You can go to ums.org to get your tickets. Students, if you don't have tickets, you really have no excuse, because you get student prices that are just out of this world. It's a heck of a deal. So hurry up and get your tickets and be there tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. And for those dear beloveds in the audience who showed up in costume this evening, my favorite people here this evening, a few of you dared to come out, and we are going to be giving away, John will be giving away, 2 pairs of tickets. So you will, lay in wait. For regular series attendees, I just want to mention to you, and for those of you who are not regular Penny Stamp Series attendees, please do join us. Our regular home is at the Michigan Theater on Thursdays. We start at 5:10. There are brochures out in the vestibule. So pick one up on your way out and join us. We're always free programs, and we bring lots of interesting folks. Next Thursday, we're bringing a graphic designer extraordinaire from London by way of Brazil. She is not only a groundbreaking graphic designer, but she's a filmmaker, and we're going to be showing her feature-length film following her talk. And special tip for anyone who's a Penny Stamps person, you can get a ticket for $6 with no fees online at the Michigan Theater website if you use the code Willer, Marina's last name. Please do remember to silence your cell phones. Today's format is a conversation, as you can see. And then that will be followed by some form of figuring out who in costume to give tickets to. And then we will have a moment for questions from you all. If you can see when we get to that moment, there's a microphone here on a stand. There's a stand here that will have this microphone. And I think, yes, there's another one over there. So when we get to the moment, Chris will invite you into the conversation. You can line up at one of the mics and ask questions as you will. First, before we bring out our guests, a couple of things about them. Our guest of honor, who I'm sure most of you know, John Cameron Mitchell. Maybe some of you are here not unknowing. He is best known for his double Tony Award-winning rock opera and 2001 film Hedwig and the Angry Inch. He's an actor, playwright, screenwriter, and director, and most recently podcaster. Off of the stage, Mitchell works in the realm of feature film, documentaries, and advertising for Dior and Agent Provocateur. He's appeared in numerous acting roles in film and television, including HBO series Girls, as Andy Warhol in HBO's Vinyl, and recently as in the series the Hulu series Shrill, which is pretty great. I checked it out. I like it. His newest venture, though, that you'll hear some about this evening, is a podcast called Anthem, Homunculus, presented by the Luminary podcast network and starring himself, Glenn Close, Patti Lupone, Cynthia Erivo, Denis O'Hare, Laurie Anderson, and Marion Cotillard. Quite a cast. His creative work proudly focuses on explorations of sexuality and gender, celebrating nuance and individuality in all its many forms, which is wonderful, and wonderful to be here doing that. To interview our guest this evening, we have just the right character. who lives here locally. For the last 10 years, Chris Azzopardi has been the editor of Q Syndicate, the national LGBTQ wire service, serving LGBTQ publications across the United States. For the Syndicate, he's interviewed musicians, actors, allies, and icons including Beyonce, Meryl Streep, Lady Gaga, and Mariah Carey. His stories are published locally and between the lines. He did a great story just maybe a week ago, a preview to John's appearance here, which hopefully many of you caught. He also did a 2014 interview with Dolly Parton, which was published in her life and career book anthology titled Dolly on Dolly. And then, I think that's quite exciting. I'm hoping we can get Dolly here with Chris sometime. Hope springs alive, eternal, something like that. In June for Vanity Fair, he interviewed John Cameron Mitchell for a Hedwig retrospective called Why Hedwig and the Angry Inch Still Sings and Blows Bohemian Rhapsody Away. Chris has also written for Entertainment Tonight, GQ, Billboard, and the New York Times. Please welcome Chris Azzopardi and John Cameron Mitchell.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, all you punks and queers and allies. I feel like there's got to be a few of you in this crowd. Yeah, make yourselves known. Yeah, there you are. Welcome to church.
Are there any Catholic terrorists?
You want to tell them the story?
Well, they got hit. This church got hit today by some Catholic protesters who I guess had a problem with the rainbow. The rainbow doors out front, they knocked them all down and nailed a Martin Luther's type ridiculous manifesto on the door.
It's a novella.
It's a novella.
Yeah.
It's a telenovela. Yeah. It's so...
Yeah.
I didn't think Catholics did that kind of thing. I thought that was more of a, evangelical Protestant. Catholics are a little more classy about their bigotry.
Except Ann Arbor Catholics.
Ann Arbor Catholics. I don't think they're from town. They must have come in from somewhere else.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you, John. We have had many conversations in the last year.
Yep.
And growing up a Catholic, myself, not one of those Catholics.
How many Catholics or lapsed Catholics do we have in the house? Okay,
Yeah.
Right.
So I identify as a lapsed Catholic, and
They say the greatest artists were lapsed Catholics.
the greatest.
Catholics say that.
So I'm sitting next to a great lapsed Catholic
Great
artist right here. I do want to say, I think, we both loved the same boy growing up, and I don't know if you know this, but he's here today.
Same boy?
Yeah, he's right there. That was our first love, the first boy we ever loved.
He was so cute, wasn't he?
Was,
But
past
in
tense.
the Catholic churches, he's more naked. He's like old there too, isn't he? I don't think he ever got old. And there's a giant organ behind him too, which
He's
kind of ironic to be talking about Hedwig tonight. So I hear the largest organ in Ann Arbor is in the space that we're performing in tomorrow.
yes.
But it's in the floor. The organ's in the floor.
Jesus won't be there either. I don't know. What was church like growing up for you? Was it this queer?
No.
I mean, you were a boy of duty,
I wish we'd had that.
a Catholic schoolboy.
I am.
John grew up a Catholic schoolboy.
I was very Catholic, very conservative Catholic. My parents were super popish. Mom was an anti-abortion activist.
Yeah.
And they they were sophisticated. I mean, they weren't obnoxious. They were just, they were kind of like Bill Buckley type Catholics. My dad was a general in the army. My mom was from Scotland, teacher, artist. But and here's my grandfather. No. Oh, is something off?
Just a slight tweak.
Is mine okay?
Is that better? That's better. I did. Yeah. Now we're not eating our mics, John. Yes.
Breathe.
Thank you.
I love it. Church daddy.
Daddy.
Actually, my mic.
You're gonna come back here, aren't you?
I'm gonna come
He
back.
likes Ann Arbor.
It's a big choir loft. I mean, I was super Catholic. I mean, you gotta have something to fight against, and you know what they say about Catholic girls.
I don't know it. Oh.
They rebel eventually,
sure.
and they're great in bed. Mormon boys and Catholic girls, just remember that. United Church of Christ, I don't know. But it was, something to think, there was always a lot of stuff to push against. So, and being queer, my mom was like, well, just become a priest. That's what it's for. It's for you. And I'm like, oh God. And she has Alzheimer's now, and she was very upset for a few years. She's actually really happy now, but I would just sort of tell her what she wanted to know, and I was like, Mom, I'm studying for the priesthood. And it was too far gone for that to be impressive to her. The priest brought her Holy Communion at her house, and the last time it happened, she sort of spit it out. She said, what you putting paper in my mouth for? It's funny what Alzheimer's can do. It kind of clarifies things, simplifies.
So there was no priesthood in your future, but I do feel like your filmography.
I am a priest. I am. I mean, I'm a pastor. I'm using the pastor's parking spot. I'm sorry. But my aunties and mom and stuff, when they see me speaking or teaching or performing even, there is a kind of pastoral part of it, which is gathering people together for the power of love and good and helping each other out. And
your mom sees that now.
My mom
I don't think she did in the beginning, right?
She did. That's why she thought I should just go away.
Yeah, sure.
But my aunt is also a very cool, super liberal nun.
Your Aunt Terry.
My Aunt Terry, who is played by Patti Lupone in my podcast.
Patti Lupone plays Aunt Ida.
Yeah.
In Anthem, Homunculus. Yes. Did you deal with the repression that you dealt with, I guess, as a young Catholic boy, can oftentimes show itself as an adult, maybe through art, through your work? I feel like you have sort of pushed against convention and conformity in Hedwig and in Shortbus.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a result of having grown up the way you grew up?
Definitely. I mean, there was a line cut from our piece, the podcast, where my character says, the arch-conservative and the arch-liberal both got, screwed up by their dad. Yeah. But the only difference is the conservative thought he deserved it. And then a character says, it's the unloved that changed the world. And I wasn't unloved, but I was ignored often. Neglected a little bit. And, there was enough to make me question things, but enough love to not kill myself, which other people, that was the reaction to that. A lot of queer kids, as you know, suicide and addiction are astronomical percentages compared to the general population, and that's easing. It's better. because things have changed. And I don't ever say we should go back to the old ways and the old troubles, though there's new troubles, different kinds of troubles. But there was invention in adversity if it didn't destroy you. So my heroes were people who were incredible iconoclasts, but also creating their own communities rather than just nihilistic, Even the early punks, there was a corrective feeling about their anarchy. It was like to call attention to the sins of the fathers, let's say, but it was to promote a better society. Punk, like anything, can be co-opted and just become fashion and aggression. But to me, the aggression was scary until I came out. And interestingly, I got into punk rock after I came out. And of course, AIDS had just hit when I came out.
Yeah.
So, I came out in '84, and that's when it hit the headlines in the US. And so right away, who I loved was connected to mortality and politics and bigotry and hatred and neglect. And heroism. I saw people stepping up. I was too scared to be a street person, but I would see these artists like David Wojnarowicz and playwrights like Larry Kramer stepping forward and saying, no, this is wrong. And that was very inspiring.
They emboldened you.
Yeah, they were my heroes. And certain queer filmmakers like Gus Van Sant and Todd Haynes and Pedro Almodovar. And these were people all who just inspired the hell out of me and were my heroes. And it was out of the fire that their work came, and Hedwig was in some ways a late addition. It kind of appeared right when, the year before the drugs came in, and in a club scene that was very angry. It was a very, very angry and creative place.
You were performing as Hedwig at the Squeeze Box in Soho, in New York.
Yes.
And you were working out the character there until you brought the character to the film, which was released in 2001.
Well, it was first off-Broadway.
Yes.
But I had come up in traditional theater and TV and film, and even there, I was being told I had to be in the closet or this or that. It didn't seem very freeing.
Yeah.
And I was a bit of a punk, and I was very openly gay, and when agents and people were saying I shouldn't, but I was like, I don't want to work with people who wouldn't want to work with me because I'm gay, so let this winnow them out, and so I was a little bit of a punk then, even in the theater world. So during during Secret Garden and these other plays, I would be going out to these clubs and watching incredible performers and bands and drag queens and trans performers who were just stunning, and I married my ideas to what I learned from them with the composer Stephen Trask to create Hedwig.
I'd like to trace back the steps that you took to get to being an actor, because I know you were a child actor. You were in The Birthday Party, which was your first role, right? If you were quite young, and I wonder.
My first role was the Virgin Mary.
The Virgin Mary.
That's why I feel very comfortable here. At a boys' school in Scotland, and the best soprano boy played the Virgin Mary. And it was completely not. It was completely. There were no rude remarks. It was okay. It was allowed. Remember, Shakespeare had boys playing women.
No manifesto.
Because of sexism. Yeah. But in this case, it was a boys' school, and there had to be, some female roles. And I received the honor of singing Sleep, Holy Babe upon my mother's breast, which did make us laugh because the word breast was in there. And this would be like 73 when I was 10 in Scotland. My mom's, from Glasgow.
So what was the birthday party?
Birthday party was the first proper play I did in school at St. Pius, the 10th High School in Albuquerque, and it was a Harold Pinter play. My first play was a Pinter play, and we didn't think it was anything weird about it. It was just theater. We had this really cool crypto-lesbian drama teacher who was too liberal to really be a nun, so she taught theater, and she made many wonderful people, including Mike Judge, who went on to create Beavis and Butthead, Silicon Valley, and we went to school together, and also Jesse Ferguson went to my high school.
Oh, it's a Modern Family.
Yeah, so she was really cool. We had science fiction class, and my first performance in the talent show, the other lesbian was teaching psychology and doing the talent show, and we would do the Milgram experiment in class. Does anyone know what that is? Well, I use it in Anthem because I have amalgam, Miss Campbell Heron. I amalgamated the two lesbians into one character played by Bridget Everett, and we're doing Fiddler on the Roof. And she's like, I don't think you guys understand this play. We're gonna do. And she brings up a minor chorus member, Todd Croy, puts electrodes on him, and makes each cast member, give him electric shocks. It's fake, he's pretending to be electrocuted. But she's like, turn it up, and every one of them do. And then she says, you know what just happened here, people? The Holocaust just happened here. I think we're ready for our first run-through, don't you? So that was the kind of school I went to, even though it was this Catholic school. It was like weirdly progressive. Torturing people.
Hey, they exist.
Yeah.
We're in a progressive church right now.
We are.
There rainbow flags everywhere.
I mean, is this considered Protestant? I think it's its own thing, but I'm really I've always been interested in the history of Christianity and the Gnostic Gospels, which I'll talk about in my show tomorrow, which took Tommy Gnosis, the character in Hedwig, takes his name from the Gnostic Gospels, which were Gospels that were missed, that didn't make it in the Bible because they were a little dangerous, and they also, women were considered equals in worship, but all these things that didn't fit with the church that we know. So I also was interested, like Protestantism. Catholicism is so gay, right? I mean, all the smells and bells and and the art. I mean, there's a famous story of Cardinal Spellman, who was the famous 60s New York cardinal who was kind of a mover and shaker. He was sort of like a Giuliani, like he was thought of himself as a fun guy, but was, kind of horrible. And he had an active gay life of a kind, in that who was the FBI? Hoover, in that Hooverish, gross way. But there's a famous story of him going down St. Patrick's Cathedral for the midnight mass with the incense on the thurible, and some queen on the aisle as he goes by whispers to him, "I love the dress, but your pocketbook's on fire." It's a gay religion, and Protestants de-gayed it. They took the naked body off the cross, right? Put clothes on him, took out the Virgin Mary, got rid of the saints, wooden everything just, plain, wooden, and, got rid of the confession and the sacraments and the smells I thought it was just like, a white picket fence of religion when it used to be an ornate wrought iron gold leaf. I don't know. I'm Catholic.
Jared laughs. We're both laughing.
I'm laughing, but it doesn't
But we're
go
sitting
away.
up here.
It doesn't go away.
No, it does,
It
trust
just
me.
changes.
Well, and we'll
I mean,
get
look
to
at
this,
these
but
people. They're clearly Catholic.
Yeah.
The dressed up people, right? I mean, all souls, all saints. Oh, we're all the same.
I mean, okay, we're gonna get there, but we're gonna get to Anthem. I promise it's gonna happen, and we'll talk about
There's people leaving already. They're out.
No, they're not. No. They're the ones who left the manifesto on the door.
protesting.
They accidentally wandered in here somehow.
Last time I was here, I was working on the election. You guys, 2016.
I apologize on behalf of Michigan for that.
No,
Okay,
it's
so
not your fault. I know it's not Ann Arbor's fault.
I want to go back to school, but we're in college now, okay? You're at Northwestern.
You using the vivid past?
Yeah, I am.
We're in
Northwestern.
Okay.
Do you feel like you're back there now? Did I take you back in time?
Yeah.
Just imagine you're at Northwestern.
Yeah.
You studied theater.
Mm-hmm.
You said that nothing felt out of bounds and experimentation was important while you were in college.
Yeah.
I imagine we have some art students from the Penny Stamp School here today. Can you make some noise? Yeah. Students. You were one. I'm curious about the experimentation aspect and what you learned about yourself and your art while you were going through that process in college.
I mean, sexually it was still repressed. People, imagine, people doing the musicals. All the people doing the musicals are in the closet. This is what it was like in theater schools. And the giant queen teachers were married to women, and there was an understanding, but it was a very uptight. But in the work, it was very, exciting. And I had great teachers like Frank Galati and Paul Edwards, and it was the ferment of Chicago theater. Steppenwolf was Ascendant, and my first play was at the Goodman, playing Huck Finn, and Frank Galati would tell us that any piece, anything can be put on stage. So suddenly there wasn't a limitation. Broadway has the same revivals over and over, but he would take the Confederacy of Dunces and make it to a musical. He would take the letters of Chekhov with his lover, and make it into a theater piece. And suddenly anything was possible, and that really stayed with me. And I was writing, directing, and acting in school. It wasn't one thing, and I continue that. I don't think anyone should be limited to doing one thing, but you should do what you're doing fully and do it well. So I was seeing good theater in Chicago. I was in the closet, not getting laid, so getting a lot done. Which was good, because I had a career as soon as I got out of school, because I was not getting laid. And then AIDS hit, and it's like, welcome to gayness. But it was also very, it felt like a kind of responsibility, to be gay then, and to step up. And it felt very cowardly to be in the closet. And though I wasn't a street protester, I was very much I was very active. And that was in the work as well. And I would be doing certain things, but wanting them to be more extreme or better, or,
Yeah, and Frank would tell you anything can be dramatic. The phone book can be
the
dramatic.
phone book can be put on stage. Anything can be made dramatic.
How did that bleed into the work that would come after college? So, Hedwig, Shortbus.
Yeah, well, an example is Shortbus, my second film. I started with a thesis that if sex in our lives is dramatic, and often it is, right? I mean, the first time you have sex with someone you're in love with, there's a lot going on in there. sex can be connected to trauma and violation. It can be connected to joy and freedom. It can be connected to group experience. It can be political. And I never understood why films and theater would, as soon as those characters would start to have sex, they'd cut to the curtain billowing in the window, or cut to the candle. And I'm like...
Can I preface this by just for people who have not seen Shortbus, it opens with a man blowing himself. And I can't believe I just said that in church, but I did.
I wasn't going to say that. I was not going to say that. I don't know if that's a sin, though. Because it's not pre- or extramarital sex, is it?
So you lifted the curtain.
It's self-fertilization. Well, here's an example. One of my actors jokingly mentioned that he did that as a teenager and probably could still do it. And I'm like, what a beautiful way to introduce a character who is so deeply alone, and in fact, you find out is suicidal. What an interesting, funny, bizarre way to have, and he's in a relationship. He's alone and he's videotaping himself, blowing himself. And for some purpose, you're not sure, like a film or, a letter, and he comes and then he bursts into tears. Every bodily fluid is used in my films. And did you just gag or laugh? They're all sacred. They're all sacred, and sex is so disrespected in our country. It's made into, it's left for porn. I'm not against good porn. A lot of terrible porn. There's a lot of, and every straight man should have a gay man in the room when they have sex with a woman for the first time, so he can identify the real orgasm, because straight men have been watching porn too long and they don't know what an orgasm is when it's a female orgasm. It's right, it's screaming women lying on porn. So that's another thing, a character in the piece. One of the actors, and it all came from the actors' lives. She said, it took me a long time to access my orgasm, and I said, what if the character has never had one and she's a sex therapist? She's a hypocrite, and so that she's the lead of the piece. So these are examples of using metaphors that are sexual to tell us more about the character. And why not be able to use every paint in the paint box? These are all things we understand in our own lives and have experienced. Why should we be afraid of them in film? So that's an example of pushing something, but still using, narratively, it's a very traditional narrative. It's a comedy on the surface. That's another thing. Europeans, whenever they would have sex in their films, it would always be connected to boredom and depression. And, sex can be hilarious, and it can be depressing, it can be fun, it can be boring. Why not show other angles of that? But I used the classical education I had to tell that story, and make it something. Could we, other people are like, you could have made a lot more money with this film if you cut the sex out. And I was like, but you don't tell someone to cut the music out of a musical just because they'll make more money.
One thing you learned in school from some of your classmates, I think they were a little older than you, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Denis O'Hare, Bruce Norris. Yeah, you went to school with them, and didn't they teach you that you say no if your dignity is on the line?
Yeah, that was another thing I learned, is just the last straw. She's carefully waiting for the right time after the self-blowjob was mentioned. This is what was the question?
saying no.
No!
No.
She just said no. Well done. There is a power in saying no to something that feels wrong. And I think you should inform yourself about whether it's a knee-jerk reaction because of some repression or something you're taught, as opposed to something that really feels deeply wrong. So I often said no to things when I had no money or jobs, because they just were stupid. They just were adding to the stupidity. Some teenage comedy, I was just like, oh, I can't. And I would tell that to the casting director. I'm like 21 and I'm like, I just can't. Yeah. 21, I just can't. Do everything when you're 21. And we became very close friends because I said no. And then other times, here's an example. I did audition for one of those teen movies called Book of Love. And the character was, I didn't know what it was till I got there and saw the script. And the character was gay, but very homophobically written. And it was the 80s, and, every stupid thing was happening in these teen movies in terms of the people that weren't the straight white guys. So it was every stupid stereotype. And I came into the audition, and the guy directing it was Bob Shea, who ran New Line Cinema. So the head of the studio was directing his first film. And he said, "What do you think of the script?" And I was like, I just think this is really homophobically written, this character. And he's like, "No, it's homoerotic." And I said, "Homogenous begins with homo too." But they mean different things. And he's like, "Well, why is it homophobic?" I said, "Because there's a pedophile joke followed by this S&M joke." Even the stereotypes are mixed metaphors. It's just like, it's just not. And he's like, "Well, how would you do it if the character was straight?" It's like, how do I do the gay pedophile joke if the character's straight? I'm like, I just sort of mumbled something and left, thinking that was the end of it. But I tried to be reasonable in explaining why, rather than canceling him or
He rewrote the character.
Or doing the job. He rewrote it, and cast me and made him straight. Because he couldn't have a gay character in a film like that at that time. And it was a horrible experience, and I moved to New York because of it. And he would keep coming to see me in plays, and he was like, "It's your Uncle Bob," And then Hedwig happened, and he's like, he was just loved it, and he's like, I want you to direct this film, and I want to pay for it. I want you to make the film of this. I've never directed anything on film. And he was there. And it was because he said that I engaged with him in a constructive way and taught him something. And it felt like I could speak up from a position of no power, not yelling, but just kind of saying, "Hey, this is not really this is lazy writing." And he learned something, and he was grateful, and he let me make the film I wanted to make.
Who has seen Hedwig in here? Yeah, we know her, gender fluid punk rocker from East Berlin.
For people that don't know,
yeah,
it's about a boy named Hansel in communist East Berlin who's gay and knows that there must be something better out there for him. He meets an American GI they seem to fall for each other, and the GI says, if you change your gender, you can marry me and escape East Germany. And this boy didn't want to change his gender. He was a comfortably feminine gay boy. And his mother, his boyfriend, and the German Democratic Republic of Germany conspired to change his gender. And moments later, he's abandoned by the guy. He's in a trailer park watching the wall come down on TV.
And with that said, I will show the trailer.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. We can cue it up right now.
I don't like this trailer.
Don't like this trailer? Is there a second trailer?
It was forced on me.
You don't want me to show it?
I don't want you to show it.
Okay, that's
I'm
fine.
the pastor right now.
You are, yeah, you are calling the shots. This is your talk.
But
Okay.
it's a character that isn't trans, was forced into this situation, but finds a transformation after hitting bottom. There's a joke in Anthem where someone says, "I finally hit my bottom." He hit me back. Nothing sinful about sex. It's how you use it, isn't it? And the way the character bounces back, suddenly realizes that the music that he loved as a kid might be a way out.
Yeah, the story is not a tragedy. It's all about
It's
survival.
not a tragedy. I mean, it's a tough road, and the character has been assigned female against his will, and then goes with it and decides it's going to be the best female you've ever seen.
The gender of one.
Gender of one, and creates an armor of drag that works until the next troubles with a boyfriend who steals her songs, Tommy Gnosis, of course, from the Gnostic Gospels. We talk about the show, talk about these things in the show tomorrow night. Yeah.
Hedwig was a personal exploration for you as well.
Yeah.
You
In terms of the feelings,
were faith.
not the facts, but the feelings of Hedwig.
Sure. Yeah, and also sort of discovering that you could, as a gay man, embrace your feminine side. Can you talk a bit about that and what that process was like for you?
I mean, as I mentioned in the show tomorrow, we all have these things that society calls female and male energies. We all have both. We have all. We have a mixture. And when society or others stop you, or yourself stops you from expressing them, and it doesn't mean just allowing them to flow, there can be hell to pay. There can be trouble. We all know about the addiction and suicidal thoughts and things that happen for people trying to crush things about themselves that are healthy. Who they love, a femininity, a masculinity, whatever. These things, when they're crushed, lead to happiness and, in fact, death. Can lead to soul death and physical death. And I described my femininity. It was like a mouse that died in the wall. It really stunk the place up. And Hedwig, I fell into it because Hedwig was one character in a multi-character piece, a small character. But my composer, Stephen Trask, and I were hanging out in this club, Squeezebox, which was a rock and roll drag club where drag queens would sing with the house band. So he's like, we can do material from our piece at this club, and I know you're not a drag queen, but they don't know. And you can, it's like a preview of what it was going to be. And so it had a crucible effect, for Hedwig, watching these performers who, I was sort of an uptown theater person, hanging out downtown, because that's where I felt more alive. And so I learned from them. I added my uptown Broadway stuff to it, worked really hard. The queens taught me how to tuck my penis, which is a sacred art. Even though the audience could only see me from the neck up, I was very perfectly tucked. And I learned from the queens. They taught me how to be Hedwig. And as soon as I did the role, almost to the moment of that night, I suddenly felt more relaxed about myself, my body. I was suddenly attracted to feminine guys, which I wasn't before, because, when you're on a hookup app and you're like, only white people, just a preference. There's a difference between fetish and societal proscription. And I, by, experience, was taught that being a feminine guy was worse than being a murderer and worse than being a woman. And I wasn't going to be that, and I wasn't going to be attracted to that. You know, and we're also taught, you know, often when we're white, that you don't associate in any way with other races or religions, whatever it is. And these aren't just preferences. These are often instilled in us. We have to free ourselves from some of them, not just sexually, but in many ways. And then there's fetish, which is something else that is imprinted on us by life and experience. And you might grow up and there was that hot Latino boy in school, and you like Latino guys, you know. It's not necessarily preference, it's a bit of a fetish, and that's fun too, as long as there's not what I think of as making a person into a fetish, right? Objectification, though there's times where I've certainly wanted to be objectified. But you know what I mean. We all know what that feels like. Women feel it often more because it's a man's world. And it's like, I'm into you, the idea of you. You don't ever get past that. I have a friend who's Asian and a trans woman, and she's like, I'm getting fetishized from top to bottom, from right, you know. And trying to find someone who isn't just into the hotness of an Asian trans woman was harder for her, you know. And but then I'm also reminding her fetish is something that's natural too, but it has to be combined with the breadth of a person, the breadth of life, you know, play with it.
I love that.
In dimension.
Yeah. Anthem, Homunculus.
This is such a very sexual talk tonight. I don't know what it is.
I don't know what happened.
Space.
Yeah. Well, let's. There's a real breath of life in the podcast. I mean, it feels like a breath of life. I've listened to all 10 episodes of John's new Luminary podcast, Anthem, Homunculus, and there's a lot of dealing with reconciliation and loss. It's essentially John's autobiography. It's autofiction.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about Cian Mackay, who is the protagonist? And then
I sort of did this interesting thing of a fake autobiography that has a lot of real events, but the character that I play is me if I never left my small Kansas town. It's kind of an interesting exercise, writing of autobiography of what you might have been if you hadn't taken some risks. And sometimes the risks are circumstance. Sometimes it's like, oh, you get pregnant, right? Or your father is ill and that changes your life. In my case, my character tries to escape and then hides out.
can I play that trailer? I have.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to make sure that's okay with you.
Good afternoon, America and beyond. My name is Cian, and I have a brain tumor. I'm crowdfunding for my life, and I will remain online till you cough up the $100K I need to cut this fucker out. Listen in and you'll meet the people trying to keep me alive, my family, both biological and logical. And if you can't afford to pledge, maybe just stay up with me and watch my life flash before your ears. Anthem Homunculus, a new musical podcast, available only on Luminary.
This was originally supposed to be a TV show. You wrote it as a TV show.
I wrote it first as a Hedwig sequel. So I wanted to talk about my life and things that were happening today, and I thought Hedwig was just an easy voice that people would listen to, but it was too much information to have Hedwig and me. So I got rid of Hedwig, found my composer Brian Weller, and we wrote it as a TV series because it was big. No one wanted to do it, it was too weird. So a company said, podcast? In the future, we will all have a podcast for 15 minutes. And we tried to make a new kind of podcast that was very dense. It was more like audio cinema. You know, there's 40 actors, 40 pieces of music, you know, amazing cast.
Yeah, this is an audio musical.
Yeah.
So Glenn Close plays John's mother, Kian, which is essentially John. And then his Aunt Ida is played by Patti Lupone, and Cynthia Erivo plays Joan the Bishop,
The mother of your child. Yeah.
the mother of your child. Laurie Anderson plays his brain tumor.
Yes, Laurie, I said I can think of no one else for the role. Laurie, and she's like, okay. And it was so liberating. Obviously the budget's much less because you're just doing audio, but we're trying things that we hadn't really heard in audio. A lot of fictional audio shows are kind of skimpy, you know, a couple people in a room, you know, maybe a toilet running, or, you know, there's not, and we wanted a denser thing, and it
The sound is so rich.
took a long time.
Yeah.
You know, we used
I mean,
a lot of film people to make it
It
sound
sounds very expensive. And with that said, I'm going to play an actual clip from Homunculus, so you can actually experience this.
Key, her nose is bleeding. All right, Graham, get his arms.
Stay back. Please stay off the porch. Put your phones away. Put them fucking phones away.
Track number 4. Crimes of omission.
Caught ya. Saw you coming this time.
Key, you feel lighter. You've lost weight. Have you been metastasizing?
Hey, Key, isn't this place beautiful? Blue poppies as far as the eye can see.
Fenton, how many times do I have to come here?
Wow, don't you like seeing me?
I do. I'm sorry.
Could you just hold me?
Yes.
Oh, this feels so good. No one holds me around here.
Fenton, you're hurting me.
I can cry, like Gyro. Would you like me to cry?
No, I don't want you to cry.
Well, what do you want from me?
I want you to be my brother.
Oh.
I can do that.
Is that Aunt Ida?
Yeah.
What is she doing?
What do you think? She's shooting up.
I don't want to do this, Fenton.
Key, you need to top down and bottom up. You're here for a reason, okay? I'll be over here doing a tree pose.
Oh my goddess, Kim.
What, Ida?
Oh, that's my dead name, honey. It's Sister Max now.
Right, I'm sorry.
Names matter.
I forgot.
Oh, whoa. I got a little lightheaded there.
Why are you still doing this to yourself?
Pain management. Still got the disease here. My punishment for bumping myself off, I guess.
Oh, Max.
Oh, I think I got off pretty easy. Hey, did you bump yourself off too? Is this a suicide planet?
Max, I'm sorry. I never came.
Oh, Ken. Come here. Get over here. There's room for you on this pew. That's it. Who's your favorite anti-maimed?
Max, my tumor's getting bigger. I think it's everything I did wrong.
Damn. You are Catholic.
Love that it's such a good one-liner.
So that's a hallucination. The character has a brain tumor, so he has these seizures. So the beginning of that was him having a seizure, and he kind of goes into the afterlife, and he sees his dead brother, Fenton, who is kind of his Virgil to his, Dante. And he keeps seeing people from his life that have passed on, and he has some scene with them talking about something that he hasn't worked out, and there's a song usually. So he does that five or six times throughout the piece.
Yeah.
Till he meets his tumor.
This is an immersive experience, so I know there's obviously no visual component, but having listened to all the episodes, I felt like I was an additional character in the story, and I think that is part of using your imagination, right? Which we oftentimes don't get to do. I mean, we see so much. We see on social media. We see watching a film or Netflix and Hulu. But this really gives you the opportunity to use your imagination.
Yeah, I think podcasts are popular because we're getting a little fatigued of, for the full package of sensory overload.
Yes, audio. Is audio the new visual?
I think audio is the new book. I mean, we all love the pleasure of a book and imagining things as we read, and the podcast just gives you a little more information, and then you still have to add your imagination to it. But we're actually going to do something fun this month in New York. We're going to do a marathon listening party at a movie theater of the whole thing, with dinner, break, and live performances, during breaks. So over 7 hours, we want to kind of institute this listening together idea.
I had this experience listening to Cynthia Erivo's "Love You for Free," which is really it's a magical moment. As somebody who grew up Catholic, gay, there was something very liberating about that song. I have the song. Will you talk about it and what it means to you after?
My favorite song.
I think it's my favorite too. So I have it. We're gonna play a little clip.
Yeah. Well, so I'll tell them what Cynthia's character. Cynthia, who's now playing Harriet Tubman in a new movie.
Yeah, she was in Color Purple on Broadway.
Amazing.
Yep.
And she's on her way to Firmament. And I wrote her this part. So it's the only character that's not based on someone in my life. And my mom was an anti-abortion activist, and she did it in the Catholic way, which was a little less confrontational maybe, except for these Catholics, where she would help the unwed mothers, try to help. But of course, in return for them giving up the kid for adoption, it was quid pro quo. And there was a girl she let stay at our house, and I was like, who's this woman? And she's like, shut up, she's pregnant. Just let her stay in your room and she'll give her baby up for adoption. It's my room. Selfish. And then the woman disappeared the next day with our silver. So this is her character sort of adapted from this girl. My mom was also into the visions of the Virgin Mary. She lost a son, my brother, who was like Finton, really. He was 4 when he died.
Samuel. He died of a heart condition.
He had a heart problem. And so her way of dealing with that was visions of the Virgin Mary. First of all, no one's going to get an abortion because no one else will lose a child like I do. And then the Virgin Mary is appearing all over the world. We need to be there. And so she would organize trips to Bosnia and with the Virgin Mary, and I was like, could you just hold me? And she's like, I'm busy with the Virgin Mary. She had a son who died just like I did. So Cynthia, character, sees the Virgin Mary in her chest rash, but no one else can see it. My mother's character believes and takes her in, and then she makes her give up her child for adoption for $100, and it goes badly. Cynthia comes back as an evangelist, preacher, singer, who's only into the Virgin Mary. She doesn't like Jesus. She likes the Earth Mother, which is really the Virgin Mary in many cultures. The Virgin Mary, the only tiny feminist, scrap given to Catholics. My mom almost ignored Jesus. She was the Virgin Mary. It's like when the Protestants got rid of the Virgin, it was very hard for a lot of women way back. But so Cynthia comes back. She's singing this song at a rehab, and addiction rehab for my character's boyfriend, and she talks about her child that she gave up for adoption.
Okay. With that said, here it is.
When you wake up too soon, 'cause slithers of the moon got under your skin, and the walls are closing in, 'cause down in the city only God knows you're alone. When you feel there comes a time that you are not mine and I'm not yours, and hope itself ignores you, when the sigh you breathe is all you have that's yours to own. You are so early, you fit in my hand like a bird in a cup. Now when you grow up, remember my face like a promise of grace. In this world, my child, you have a place. When God swings overhead like a body from a tree, remember what I said. Don't break the thread. Just float down the river that splits into you and me. You are so early, you fit in my hand like a bird in a cup. Now when you grow up, remember my face like a promise of grace. In this world, my child, you have a place. Hush, it's just me. I'm one of the few who's gonna love you for free. Won't you take it from me? Just one of the few who's gonna love you for free. Who's gonna love you for free?
Is that the whole song?
It's not.
Oh, that's part
But
of it.
that's a pretty
I
good
was like,
portion.
did we cut off the ending?
No, it's all there on the podcast. Thank you for creating the podcast that gave us that song. It's beautiful. I was on a flight recently, listening to it, crying, and I think the person next to me thought I was, having some kind of mental meltdown, and I was like, no, this is John's new podcast, John Cameron Mitchell. Have you heard of him? Yeah, this guy. Looking at Hedwig and Homunculus, there's a thread through those stories, I think, and those narratives. I think that Hedwig, in my mind, is about the origin, right? It's the origin of love. It's who am I? Who do I want to be? Am I okay? And you ask some different questions, and there are different curiosities about life in Homunculus. Can you talk
Homunculus is about this, perhaps the second half of your life.
Yeah.
If the first is who am I? What is my place? The second is, all right, I know more of who I am. What do I do? with the time left. You know, what? Oh, it's almost over. You know, that's another story. And interestingly, you know, it's very Catholic, and the homunculus itself becomes a character that is undefined, and it changes meaning throughout. It's a Rorschach. And as sometimes a tumor is, sometimes a religion, you know, Susan Sontag talked about illness as metaphor, for better or worse. But we do that with our sickness. It's a very Christian thing to do, but the tumor itself is anthropomorphized and is causing these hallucinations, and in fact trying to communicate with the host. The first song is called Homunculus, and they, you know, he imagines the tumor talking to him and saying, as a lover I come first and you go last. You know, I will fuck you till you love me. And I'm going to be the last thing you see. So, who am I? Call me God. Isn't that what God's there for? The last thing. And my character is resisting that. You are not God. I'm not going to make death into God, which is the Christian way. There was no God without death. You have to have God to explain death, don't you? Well, people do. And I don't think that's a good way of thinking about God. You know, and certainly the old-fashioned, you know, guy with a beard, you know, went out for many people a long time ago. But people are trying to define God in different ways that are useful, you know, or goddess. And we talk about the Gnostics. You know, they thought the creator God was an evil God. And there's plenty of evidence in that in the Old Testament. It's just like, what kind of God? Abraham, kill your son. Just kidding. Punked by God? You know, it's like, it's not funny, you know. And, you know, the Apple issue included. Eve just wanted to know shit. I never understood it, even as a kid. I didn't understand those stories. But the idea of God, as my aunt Terry, as the nun, she's like, Johnny, don't tell your mother, but the Bible is just a metaphor. Take it, leave it. I'm like, tell that to my mom. She's like, you know, it's like, it's all a metaphor. Art, religion, politics, you know, these are metaphors that are useful or not. And my church became a theater, and now I'm back in the church. And so it's very important to me to continue in a way, in a maybe a better way than I was taught, to evangelize, in a way, to spread love. You know, weirdly, the Gnostics thought of Jesus as, now I'm actually, the Gnostics.
There you go.
The Gnostics connected Jesus as a manifestation of Eve, as opposed to the manifestation of the God of Israel. And when you think about it, Eve and Jesus had a lot in common, right? I mean, they were both kind of positivists. You know, they didn't talk a lot about brimstone, and they were looking for, you know, knowledge was always something that was discussed. Moving forward with love. That's all I have to say.
And I think that's a perfect place to end. So, John. Oh yeah, we're not done. Okay. We're done. We're gonna do this Halloween costume contest and a Q&A. So please stay. But John, yeah. So John, thank you.
You're welcome.
This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thanks for talking about Anthem. It's my sound daddy.
Sound
Come to the mic if you want to talk. Yes.
Hi, John. Firstly, thank you for existing. Thank you for doing all the things you've done.
Thank you. Speak into the mic.
Okay.
Closer.
So, partly due to what you did in Hedwig, for some reason, I'm now a Plato scholar.
Wait, what was that?
I'm now a Plato scholar.
You
because
are?
of what you were writing about Aristophanes in Hedwig. And that was the first time I looked at Plato and went to look at the symposium. So I was kind of interested in whether you remember the first time you encountered that myth and how you then went about deciding to make that a central point of Hedwig, and also how you decided to use it. So what way you used it.
I mentioned it, I talk about it more in the show. Are you coming to the show?
I am.
Okay, I talk about it more there, but the myth of the origin of love comes from Plato's Symposium, which is 400 BC, classical Athens. It's a philosophical tract in the form of a gay dinner party. And all the gays are there, Socrates, Aristophanes, Phaedrus, all the gay mafia of Athens. And they each have to give a speech about the nobility of love, specifically between two men. And Aristophanes has a more ecumenical story about the fact that we were all round with two heads, 4 arms, 4 legs, and we were very powerful, and the gods cut us in half, and we are seeking our other halves. And there used to be the male creature that was cut in half, and that led to the men who love men. Female creature led to the women who love women. The androgynous, non-binary, or double-binary creature is seeking their other half and kind of become straight people. And it was a beautiful myth that I saw in an adaptation of the symposium on stage in LA, which was excellent, by a friend who just emailed me. I just saw his email. And so that I knew that was going to be the center of Hedwig, of my piece that became Hedwig. It was such a strong metaphor for the idea of love as a healing of a primal wound, and leading to perhaps a kind of power that comes out of love and creation. Yes.
Real quick, I just wanted to say I miss your Instagram daily or semi-daily, divinations, and I was wondering if you would bring those back. So I already saw you earlier. So
I used to do a divination. You know, the fun game where you ask a question of a text and you randomly choose.
Yeah, bibliomancy.
The Bible or whatever, the I Ching. I would do it with Walt Whitman's Song of Myself, which is a really good one for that. So I think I would like to bring it back, but maybe find another text. It's hard to do better than Whitman for that, but I tried it with Burroughs and it was very dark.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. How are you?
Good.
I just have a quick question about the podcast.
Yes.
It was just like really, really well done, super cool. And I was wondering, how did you guys act that? And were you in a space that you were acting in it, or were you in separate booths, or how did that all kind of come together?
We learned as we went along. First, we were in the same room, studios, music studios usually. We had headset mics and other mics so that we could move around and not lose the sound. I found that the overlaps got in the way of editing, so then I started recording people in a studio but with a separation, so they could act through a window but they were separated sound, so that we could have more flexibility in editing. And then some things I would fix. I'd go to their house and just record them on one of these, and then if like Glenn Close was in London, I would say, could you just yell this line into your iPhone with the towel over your head? And she's like, done. And I said, and take a picture of yourself with the towel over your head for the making of documentary. So a lot of times we could use people just talking on their iPhones if it was a certain sound quality. Otherwise, we'd have to get the nicer mics, But you could do a lot of fixing. I did a lot of fixing at home on my own mic, and just recorded myself on Logic, and learned. I learned how to write songs on this project because I hadn't done that before, I learned how to record, and mix a little bit. So it was this, it's always something new. I like to try something new all the time. Yes?
So I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister, actually.
You are?
Yeah, and just wanted to let you know that the U's and UCC have this great sexuality curriculum called Our Whole Lives. It's really comprehensive and awesome. So everything you said here this evening, I can't speak for the UCCs, but over at the UU congregation, we're all about it. So I guess my question is, what are you doing Sunday morning? Because several of us on the worship team are big old queers. So.
Actually, these people are taking me on a trip around Detroit, which I know nothing about.
Maybe next time.
Yes, thank you, though. I appreciate it. Yes.
Hi. Something that I see in your character, so Hedwig and a lot of the characters in Shortbus, and then your character in Anthem, they're deeply sad. They're you said Hedwig isn't tragic, but it's sort of like in the beginning, which is very tragic character, but so enviable. Like, I want to be them, but they have terrible lives. So I guess my question is if you see it that way as well, and also where that comes from, because I see it as sort of a through line in a lot of your work. It's from personal experience or role models.
Yeah, I mean, I always, liked sad music and sad stories, and I was a sad kid a lot, and death was in my life a lot. And I was a new kid because I moved around as an army brat, so I never fit in. The advantage to that is you saw that there was a big wide world and people did things in different ways, and it was awesome. I like that. I'm still very curious about where they're from and what happens there and what they eat and what music is played, and I'm interested in every culture, even if I'm scared of some, I'm interested. And the army is a socialist state for rednecks. It's free healthcare, housing. It's racially mixed. It's an interesting experiment that is the closest thing to a functional social state we've ever had. Though the very first secular communist community in the world was in Indiana. Was Robert Owen's New Harmony. So we had this weird history of crazy experiments. Sometimes they were bloodthirsty, sometimes they were beautiful. Ideas of human rights came out of the Renaissance, but also came to fruition in the US while we're killing the natives. So there's this crazy mix in this country that I've been party to and also scared of and glory in, but it's sad. There's this death is our handmaiden, in this country and in my life. So I just my favorite place is right between tears and laughter, and that's God knows that's where we are now. And there's a sense of apocalypse from the beginning of me, so, and science fiction and fantasy was always, and the Revelations, which is a fantasy novel, was fascinating to me, and Laurie Anderson sings a song about the apocalypse as the tumor, but her version where the Christ and the Antichrist embrace and they vanish into the deep, as matter and antimatter should. Maybe that's where I want to get to, is where those things disappear and there's just humans trying to take care of each other. I think maybe the only solution is us discovering intelligent aliens. I think that might actually make us treat ourselves better if we knew there was another. Of course, the terrorist Catholics' heads would explode if that happened, because then they're like, well, Jesus must have had to die on that planet. Too. Right? Did he die on all those planets? With intelligence? No, it's too much to deal with. Does that answer your question?
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, so you've done like a lot over
The last 45 minutes, yeah.
Or decades. I know that's a really bad summation of it. But you've done a whole. I don't know. Especially after minister, am I allowed to have like a bit of a potty mouth? You've done a fuck ton of things. And so my question is just like, I guess, both for me and I think just as a representative of kind of the art students here and all the other students in general, but like, do you ever have a feeling when you're trying something new of like, what if this is just not for me? What if this ends up being just the worst? Like, do you ever just second guess yourself, and like, how do you just push past that? Because you just seem to keep on going and going and trying these new things. Like, even just now, you were just casually mentioning how you just taught yourself how to write songs for your podcast that you also have never done.
Even if this, and not that many people are listening to this podcast because it's behind this paywall, and it's also not something that's easily described. You can't listen to that and try to tell someone what it is. They're used to podcasts, 2 people in a room, whatever. So it's not, but it'll be there forever, and people will find it over time. Hedwig was a flop in the theaters. It clung to life off Broadway. It was a flop on screen. DVD people found it. We still haven't made our money back from Shortbus. My last film sank like a stone, but I'm proud of all of them. Fashion is different from substance. And I like it, my friends liked it. Not everyone's gonna like it. That's okay. You make stuff for yourself and your friends that you respect. I think I need those friends and I need collaborators. I think it's hard to write alone or do stuff alone. That's why writers drink, painters drink, because they're alone too much. And that's their way out of themselves. For me, I could have either written an autobiography or made this podcast. And with the autobiography, there's no one to share a drink with when it's done. So I did it with other people. And we're going to have this listening party. And I'm proud of it. It's like, it's not a hit. It made a little bit of money. It's not about that, And so if it's going to be terrible, you have to also define what terrible means. Does it mean a lot of people aren't going to like it, but you do? That's different. If you don't like it, you experimented, you failed. You don't move on until you've failed. I've been fired from things, it taught me stuff, not to deal with Hollywood or do it on my own terms, because it's they'll chew you up. The power of no is useful, as long as it's not stopping you from making your own thing, but the power of no to things that feel wrong, that other people are doing, is important. But to me, I just want to make people not feel alone. And that's what religion does for some. That's what service does for others. Parenting can do that. We're all not lucky enough to be twins who are never alone. Though I just saw that Netflix documentary. What's it called? Tell Me Who I Am? Oh my God. You got to see it. It's so disturbing, but it's really touching. A twin, they're 18. One of the twins has an accident and forgets everything. So his twin tells him everything, how you eat, this is your girlfriend, and his twin told him everything, but his twin didn't tell him about what happened before with some terrible abuse in the family. So it's just very powerful. But does that answer your question? I don't know.
Thank you.
It's got to be just pushing it. But one thing I'll say is don't read the user comments. Ever. Listen to your friends first. Don't ever read it. Don't put anything on YouTube until it's done. Don't put the fetus on the YouTube. Put the baby. Yes.
Wait.
I'll be baptizing people after.
Okay, good.
Yes.
So like there's this like bootleg version of the off-Broadway Hedwig show that I really, really like, and it has like totally different energy from like the on-Broadway ones.
Yeah.
And I also heard that like, like David Bowie and like Lou Reed, and I'm a huge Velvet Underground fan. So I just wanted to know like what were their reactions and what was like the difference in like the public reactions between the on and off Broadway shows?
Well, off-Broadway was a lot of people who liked theater didn't know what to make of it. Stephen Sondheim came and said, I hated it. It's too loud and it's not my kind of music. And he was very honest. I didn't feel hurt at all. But it wasn't to everybody's taste. And we'd often have very silent audiences. And then at the end, they surprisingly would put their hands up in the air during midnight radio. And we had reached something, With the silent audiences, I was thinking in my head, well, this is what the film is like. The Hedwig's, touring and no one's interested. So it was always interesting to me. I always liked playing around with expectation and confounding people, but in a way that wasn't to shock, but it's to say, hey, the world is a many splendored thing, and I'm using Borscht Belt humor and drag, and I'm using Plato and this and Bowie, and these things all really go together, in my view. Tell me what you got. What are you going to put together? What's your interest? So when our heroes, David Bowie, Lou Reed, Iggy Pop, Barry Manilow, when they came to the show and loved it, we were vindicated suddenly. We were shocked. But Bowie was like, John, you got it right. And Lou said, John, you're beautiful. And I could have died, and it was, those are my heroes, And the fact that they got it and loved it, and very theatrical rockers, who were poets too, and David Bowie took from mimes and Judy Garland, and Lou Reed learned from his drag friends, and he listened to R&B, and they all learned from different places as I did. And my favorite compliment is when a young person says, that made me want to make something new. Not imitate you, but make something new, because a new thing can be accepted. Instead of playing the usual game of today is like, how many likes can I get? How can I brand myself? How can I sell myself? As opposed to what can I make? Because if you're just selling yourself, you're eventually, you can hollow yourself. It's like cannibalism, And if you're doing it based on your looks, of course, that will fade and you'll end up very sad. But that's why beautiful people have it harder than we know. Pity the beautiful. Because if they were told they were beautiful all the time, they were just handed things and they're bewildered. Why are you giving me this? And then they don't work on other things in their life. And then the beauty goes away. And suddenly they got nothing, So pity the beautiful. That's my message of tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, what's up?
Hey.
So not to presume too much about you, but how are you a creative person who's doing well? How do you make a structure for yourself where you're
doing well in what way?
Mentally. I mean, like, you've done a wonderful performance tonight. I don't know if you're going to eat a cat's face later, but you seem normal. How are you staying well? Because Stamps is not, like, art school does not teach you how to treat yourself well.
No. Well, I'm fairly sane. I think being an artist being gay saved me from being tight, closed, maybe unhappy, maybe certainly less interesting. I think I would still maybe be curious about things and creative, but it wouldn't, I think being queer is a privilege. Being different is a privilege. At first, it's a curse, seems to be, and then you're like, oh, this gets me out of the house. Because I got to find someone else like me. This gets me out of my town. You know, if you're queer, usually the accidental pregnancy doesn't happen, so there's a, you know what I mean? There's a freedom there. It's like the first thing a queer person knows is that there's a bigger world. And it doesn't make you a better person, or, you know, there's plenty of boring and annoying Trump voting queers. They do. When I was here working on the election, I met a young guy who was like, was going to vote for Trump, and I was like, what? He says he's got gay friends, and you know, and I just think there should be, you know, I don't know what he was about, but it was just so depressing. The price of acceptance is sometimes mediocrity, you know. So being different and not fitting in is a gift if you use it right. It can destroy you if you believe the hype that you are different and therefore bad. That can destroy you, or it can make you very interesting. And that's why queer people, immigrants, people who racially didn't fit into the game, to the ruling game, have special powers that they can access. You don't always get to, and you know, money is an issue with that. But there are special powers, and a queer one is very different, you know, because you don't have to, you know, when you're black, you don't have to come out to your parents as black. You know, when you're queer, you can sometimes feel more alone, you know, so it's not the same thing. But you both understand metaphor, because if you're judged by how you look, you know that there's a difference. And if you maybe had to hide something, say you had to hide something about yourself when you were young, maybe, you understand very young there's a difference between something surface and between that and its true nature. If you are the ruling class, if everything is handed to you, you do not understand metaphor. You don't understand nuance. You don't understand that there are layers. Things are what they are. You're literal-minded when everything is fine. You know, when you're ruling class. And that is, there might be a kind of blissful ignorance in it, but I don't want to be that. I love the complexity of metaphor, of religion's metaphor, which can be interpreted so many ways, of life. You know, it's always another layer, which can be baffling for people who never understood that. And that's why you have a George Bush saying you're with us or against us, when you get people saying there's black and white and you're on one side or the other, you're liberal, you're conservative, and that's it. You know, these people are not accessing the beauty of their otherness and understanding that there's complexity. And complexity is to be embraced. Yes.
Howdy, John. Just thank you for the love tonight and for sharing it with us. But I appreciated that you mentioned privilege, and kind of we are in a privileged space right now, and we are kind of art students at a top-tier public university. Mm-hmm. My question for you is, if you were speaking to yourself in your younger years, coming out of college as a young queer person, but you were living in today, coming into, instead of the AIDS crisis, but now the Anthropocene mass extinction event, kind of what troubles would you give advice about, or what advice would you give yourself as a younger artist in today's time, kind of with this perspective you have, kind of having gone through a lot of crises now?
I mean, I'm from another time where there was perhaps more of an irreverence and a bit more of a fuck you and a kind of rowdier rebellion that was messy and didn't always go anywhere. But with AIDS, I saw the punk activism of ACT UP saving lives. I saw a direct cause and effect, and using art to do that. So I would, if I was talking to a younger version of myself now, I'd say learn about those people who did that beautifully, you know, who combined their art and their love and their politics to make things better. What is different today is with climate change, there's a kind of panic. You know, there's a sort of like, is it too late? You know, that's I address in Anthem too. It's like, we have to adjust. It may be too late, but we have to adjust. And someone calls it the drawdown, which is not the same as circle the wagons and get what you can. You know, the Trump thing is let's all die white together behind this. Right. He doesn't say that, but that's what he means. I mean, in his peanut brain, he knows there's trouble that he's not addressing, and his need for attention has, led him to this absurd madness that, state that he's in, which is infectious. I used to think the Trumps will die off and we'll all be better, but he's teaching some young people to hate. He's teaching another generation of impressionable people to. The skeleton is like. And that requires action. And it's not necessarily the action that, in a time of Trump, we see we for a long time we couldn't do anything about this government. People who were more thinking people started to need to correct each other and their friends. And you get a kind of a PC policing thing going on of like, I can't do anything about it. You, my friend, are terrible. You need to be canceled because you are ignorant or you made a mistake. And I just can hear Steve Bannon laughing in his tower as we tear ourselves apart.
Right.
There are battles coming up, and we need each other. We need to educate ourselves, certainly, but we also shouldn't shackle ourselves by using the tactics of our oppressor. One of the problems that gay men have when they grow up is they start thinking the bullies were hot. They eroticize their oppressor. And right now I feel like we're imitating this kind of swaggering, to people who are our friends and allies, and there's a kind of sensitivity is important, but it can also become paralysis. I was sitting with a student, very evolved kid in Kansas, and he'd very aware of his white privilege, and so much so that he decided that he didn't want to say anything in class at all in college for 4 years because the world has heard enough from him. It hasn't heard enough from him. It's heard enough of a certain patriarchal, annoying thing, but not from him. And we were watching a video of a Japanese house husband who stayed home while his wife worked, which is very unusual. And he was taking care of his Alzheimer's mom and washing her in the bath, and the kid was so uncomfortable. It was just a close-up of her smiling, being washed, and I'm crying, and he's like this, and I'm like, isn't that beautiful? He goes, she didn't give her consent to be naked. And I'm like, have you lost your empathy in seeking correctness? Have you lost your feelings because you're so afraid of doing something wrong? You've got to feel these things. Woke without empathy is just control. It's got to be from here. There are grievances that need to be fixed, but they have to come from here, not, stopping this, So that, I would tell myself that now, because being young right now is hard. You're not sure what you're supposed to do. But I look at people like Emma Gonzalez and a lot of young people and think, maybe they're going to save us.
And just chiming in quickly, we have a minute
A minute, quickly.
Go.
So I was just, prior to going back to school, I worked as an attorney, a trial attorney, a defense attorney, and one of the things that I did was I would watch Hedwig to learn sort of how to move. And
How to
communicate through movement. To sort of.
I want to be in that courtroom.
And yeah, sort of channel that. And so I thank you for that. And I was just curious about, do you have, like, when you were preparing for a performance and like how you're going to move in that performance, did it come naturally? Do you practice it, or do you look to other people who sort of to imitate?
I loved dancing as a kid, but I could never do choreography. So I wouldn't, I found that very uncomfortable, even doing Hedwig. I'm a freestyle moving person. And so my thing was, when I do my show tomorrow, I'll do yoga in the morning just to be loose, do a lot of warming up, and sound check is a warm up. So I actually think things like yoga are really good for any kind of public, speaking, because it just loosens up a lot of things. I mean, maybe taking some singing voice lessons actually, a lot of, especially women in our culture, in the last 20 years have, the vocal fry thing. It comes from, I think, it comes from California, but it also came from, I think, trying to lower your voice a little bit, which is authoritative and more like a man to be listened to. When you have a higher voice. I had a high voice as a kid, and everyone thought I was a woman on the phone, and I was very angry, so I would start answering the phone like this. And it wasn't comfortable, like it was hurting my voice. And, doing Hedwig actually opened up my voice. So I would say maybe actually doing some singing might actually help that. Yeah. Cool. But you hold yourself well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Come tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you to Christina Hamilton and the church and the staff, all the tech daddies, the tech mamas.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. John Cameron Mitchell.
Yay.